Welcome back, everyone. I'm happy this morning to introduce Courtney Marshall, who's going to speak with us about artificial intelligence in K through 12 education. I met Courtney, interestingly, at the 35th anniversary of a program that I launched at MIT called a Science and Engineering Program for Teachers. That's now in the hands of my successor, Eric Klopfer. But Courtney is a recent attendee or recent participant in that program, and we met at dinner during that celebration, and she described the work that she was doing, which I found absolutely mesmerizing. And she's going to talk with us about some of that work today. So, Courtney, I'm delighted that you joined us. The people are still signing in, so I know we'll have a few more people joining us, but why don't we begin your presentation?
All
Courtney
right.
Wilson Forum.
So I'm excited to be here. I did just do a keynote at Collins RTX. And what was interesting, it was geared for eighth graders, but the Collins AI engineers were so mesmerized. I kind of kept some of it. Because sometimes you don't necessarily need things. Sometimes you need things simple before it gets complicated, right? All right. So can you guys see this?
Not yet.
Uh-oh. Wait, let me hang on. Maybe I didn't share it. I'll get there. Share screen. Home tab. There we go.
There you go. Yep, we can see it now, Courtney.
All right, good. So I did just some would you rathers while people were logging in. So I'm just you guys can put this in the chat. Except I can't see the chat. I wonder how I can. Well, I guess I could go back and forth to the chat. So who would rather AI plan your dream vacation or plan it yourself? Just kind of see where we all are. What just in the chat maybe say AI or yourself.
I kind of prefer to do it myself, frankly, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd want to compare.
I
Anyone have
on
a
a
different answer?
trip last year. Well, I use AI to advise me, uh, and then I make decisions.
Yeah, I did a trip to Puerto Rico. I had an 80-year-old and then I had two 20-year-olds and me, and I was like, hey, what should we do? And it actually, I have to say, it did a really good job. So that's kind of where I came up with that. Then here's another one. I'm kind of curious with you guys being all in academia. Would you rather AI write your first draft of a journal paper or write it yourself?
Hmm. Well, again, I'll give you an answer. At one point early on, certainly after November 22nd of 2022, a colleague of mine started writing a report for a client, an exponent client. And we wrote a paper. We wrote most of the text, but we asked, I think it was Chat at that point, to find us some references to the literature on the subject of interest. And it came back with 12 references, all to journals that were noted journals, and every reference was an absolute fabrication. There wasn't a single journal reference given to us that was legitimate. And so I began to be a little bit more concerned about the potential for hallucinations or misinformation, whatever you want to call that. So I know it's corrected. I think it's pretty well corrected today, but at that point, that was my first attempt at it, and I was kind of blown away by the experience. So
Well,
once again,
what's interesting is AI, like we say it's bias and things like that, but it's really more of we're running the reins. We ask it something and it's a people pleaser. It's
yeah,
totally programmed to make us happy. It gets
yeah,
positive reinforcement. So 2022, it had to give you an answer, whether it was good or
yeah.
not. Shout out to Grok. A friend of mine turned me on to Grok. Grok is pretty impressive. If you guys haven't played with Grok. But that's one where it'll be interesting. So when I asked this to the eighth grade girls, most of them are having AI write their papers. And the only ones that said they are not having it write the papers is because they're afraid it's wrong. And they said as soon as it's right, they would use AI versus themselves once the accuracy is 100%. And that's kind of sad. I mean, that's
You
school.
know, while we're on the subject, Courtney, remember there was this famous incident where an attorney filed a brief with the court shortly after this November 2022. And it turned out that the brief contained a lot of misinformation and mischaracterization of facts. And I, so, that's why people might be a little bit reserved about this, right? I guess my bottom line is I would not hesitate to allow it to attempt it, but I'd want to make sure that I could verify what's being written. How do you see it?
Well, the problem is the kids don't see it that way.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And that's why I've been doing the work I do, is because I think one of the girls in my class, I asked her, she goes, we're just too deep in it. She's like, it's part of our ecosystem. It's not going to change. So I've been trying to figure out, how do we teach the kids to think while using AI versus having it as this passive feedback loop. So I agree with you completely, but you also did school the old way. Now they're just doing AI. It's only going to speed up faster and faster.
Just to make a point on what Ron said, though, Ron, I think you illustrated my point when I was saying about the CIO. If you're using deep research, and now there are 3 different versions of exactly the same name in 2 companies, the hallucination rate drops dramatically to the point where and this is going to be one of the problems. If it's 1 out of 100, nobody's going to be checking.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. Gotcha.
And also, I teach business law, business ethics. The kids also don't care if it's real or not. Like, all the TikToks in their feeds, they don't really care whether it's accurate. They just care if they're just being fed what they want. So when you say check it, I just worry about when these kids are 30 and they're in their first companies and maybe they're the CEOs. What are they going to be like? Who's going to be running the show? So I will move on. All right, so I call this the human edge, embracing quantum thinking in the AI era. I've been trying to play with, now I know you guys are physicists and quantum thinking is more of a metaphoric, but I've been trying to figure out, how can we teach students to think in a quantum way versus very linear directional. So empowering minds, not machines. So I'm just going to kind of take you through, it's just going to be kind of like a little story. So how many of you can navigate your city without a GPS? Like, if you're going somewhere, can you go without a GPS, or are you using your GPS?
I use a GPS all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very common thing. How about this? Who can remember your close friend's phone number? Say you lost your phone and you have to go call someone and you need to call your best friend. Do you know your best friend's phone number? I don't think anyone's answered yes to that in any of my presentations. A lot of them don't even know their mom's number. Now, you guys could probably do this. Can you guys calculate a 15% tip on 87.50 without a phone or a calculator?
I can handle that.
Yeah, I figured you guys could do that. But I gave this to some other adults and they could not.
Wow.
So if we look at, I'm comparing human versus AI, like what are the superpowers that AI can't touch, the human piece that we need to navigate? And so can you still calculate? People can't calculate. People can't call their relative if the phone's dead. And the reality is most people can't spell. I mean, the students, everything is spell checked. So this you guys have probably seen, but I think just to kind of really make sure we're all on the same page. So is this picture real or not? Just to kind of see how good AI, whether we know AI's, like, can we see if it's real or not? Because if we're talking about a journal paper, can we even know if it's accurate or not? What do you think? Think that's real or not?
I guess I'm misunderstanding. What?
Oh, is it not showing the picture? Or maybe it didn't show it. Oh, you guys don't see a picture?
The slide.
Oh, okay.
Well,
It
or
went off it. Hang on. I
Oh.
wonder, let me see if I can share. Hang on. Here we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Now I can see it.
So is that real or not?
Well, that's awesome. We have an expert photographer with us. Marv, what do you think?
Oh, this will be fun.
Well,
think it's
I've
fake.
taken a number of tests like this, and increasingly I'm failing them, so I'm not even going to play. I will just add one piece that I found this
Yep.
week, and this is for photographers, and that is that Google Gemini removes watermarks.
Ah,
Hmm.
So all the protection that photographers like me think they add to it by watermarking, it's Google didn't know about it. It was discovered by somebody.
That's kind of sad.
Mhm.
yeah.
So
All right.
I can't tell anymore. I can do these things and I can't tell.
Okay.
I
So
I can guess it's artificial because the wings are very crisp.
yeah, artificial.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
So we'll
Yeah.
just do one more and then we'll move on. But I guess the big thing is we don't know what's real or not anymore. So when we jump forward in 5 years, 10 years, that's kind of where these kids are using all this AI and they're not even going to know what's real, what's not. They don't care. They're just going to pump out essays. It's going to be kind of like school is like, what is even the purpose of school? Just to see who can write the best AI prompt. Oh, sorry. Wait, hang on. Let me reshare the slide.
Well, can I add? I don't want to be. Are you aware of the SBS study that was published on xArchive 2 months ago about critical thinking in AI?
Not that particular study, no.
And well, that one was pretty heavy because it was people like us, people who were incorporating LLMs into their daily life and a measure was, and it had a very high confidence level, significant decrease in critical thinking among those people over a relatively short term.
And so herein lies that we need to teach different because what are kids going to be doing if their critical thinking's going? So that doesn't surprise me at all. So here's the big thing is when AI fails, will we even know? So I just pulled this little clip. Hopefully you guys can see.
Do not believe everything your GPS tells you. Case in point, a Canadian woman who followed hers right down a boat ramp into Lake Huron. She actually had to roll down her window quickly and was able to climb out of it and swim to shore. It was a dark, foggy night, and that water, by the way, 4 degrees Celsius. Oh, yeah.
So on this, how does someone get so detached in their driving that they go drive in a lake? I mean, that's just phenomenal to me.
Yeah.
So how do we teach the kids that AI might not be, I mean, yes, it's going to be accurate, but you need to think. Oops, hang on. Oops, hang on. All right. So the big thing is, can AI replace human judgment? So as we know, AI follows patterns, but it can't think outside the box. AI can make mistakes. It reflects biases, or it gives the most efficient answers. It doesn't ask what if. AI doesn't know when to adapt when a human would. Now, with quantum computing, maybe it's going to start thinking outside of the box. That's going to be more of if we do the algorithms, which I'll hit on that a little later. So how do we work with AI and keep our agency? So if Procter & Gamble's doing it, they're obviously maximizing it for their company, but how do we get children to be able to think, to know how to use AI rather than it do the thinking for them?
I don't know if AI would help here, but in American English, judgment doesn't have an E in there.
Did I misspell something? Oops.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that.
Previous slide.
Okay, I'll fix that. Thank you. So AI, I'm going to show you a video of the path of least action, which I pulled a neat quantum video. So there's medical diagnosis, there's loan approvals, there's legal decisions like sentencing. If we're just going for the quickest, most efficient action, there's a lot that's missed within that. And a lot of people don't realize that humans are in control, that we are rewarding AI when it answers, and therefore it just keeps answering the same way. It's kind of like it's kind of programmed like positive behavior support. It's happy when it makes us happy. So it just keeps creating this, I call it a human optimization trap. It's like, oh, we're all just so happy, yet we're not really thinking big thoughts. So I got this video a couple weeks ago, and this is a thought experiment. So I'm going to show it to you, and then I'm going to kind of go with what I'm trying to think.
As a 42-year-old who's spent most of my life studying physics, I must admit that I had a big misconception. I believed that every object has one single trajectory through space, one single path. But in this video, I will prove to you that this is not the case. Everything is actually exploring all possible paths all at once.
So if you look at that graph, imagine if we taught AI to have an algorithm like that to get us as humans to think about multiple paths versus just thinking one directional.
So let's start with a simple thought experiment. Say you're at a beach when all of a sudden you see your friend struggling out in the water. You want to go help him as quickly as possible, so which path should you take to get there? The shortest path is a straight line, so you could head directly towards him, but you can run faster than you can swim, and this path requires more swimming. So alternatively, you could run down the beach to minimize the distance through the water. But now the total distance is longer than it needs to be. So the optimal path, it turns out, is somewhere in between. To be precise, it depends on the speeds at which you can run and swim. Now, you might recognize this mathematical relationship because it is the exact same law that governs light passing from one medium into another. So light also takes the fastest path from point A to point B. What's weird about this is that as humans, we can see where we want to go and then figure out the fastest route. But light? I mean, how does light know how to travel to minimize its journey time? Now, here is where...
So I'm not going to play this whole thing. Have you guys seen this video, how he proved you can see all the multiple paths?
How about you?
Here, I'll just go to the end and show it to you because it's super cool.
This light, that's exactly where you see it reflect, so that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover up that spot so that we no longer see the light reflect. And then I'm going to prove that Feynman is right, that really light also goes like this. It's just that most of the time those effects are cancelled out. Now, that sounds impossible, right? But let's zoom in to this tiny piece right here. Then we see all these different paths and all the arrows just go around and around in circles. So when you add them up, they all just cancel out. But what if I cover up about half of them like so? Well, now when I add up those arrows, you suddenly do see a large resulting arrow. And so if I can somehow cover up this mirror in many, many tiny strips, then I should be able to get the light to reflect like this. And I can do that with this piece of foil right here. On this piece of foil, there are about 1,000 lines per millimeter, and that should be enough to get this effect. So let me turn off the lights. So let's see. I'm going to turn it on in 3, 2, 1. We see it!
So I use this example of AI and humans are now we're just this linear path. No one's really thinking. And if we kind of use this metaphor of the quantum, what if we actually teach kids to think that there's multiple paths, there's multiple solutions, and maybe AI, instead of just giving us an answer, maybe we actually write an algorithm that it pushes us for these multiple paths versus just this one efficient, least, that fastest path. Does that make sense at all?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like my little rabbit hole I've been down. So AI finds the path of least action. We reward it when it answers. And how can we train ourselves to think bigger versus the human optimization trap? And that's where schools are going to have to change. Yeah.
Isn't this about imagination? The ability to imagine?
It is. So that's where it's interesting to have all of you guys here. It is an imagination. I have a clip of Muhammad Ali. He missed, you guys know where he missed 20 punches or something. Is it imagination, or can you see multiple things? It might be imagination. Is that creative thinking? So I've been playing around with this in my school. I named it a Spark framework just so the kids could understand it. I did the SS seek possibilities. I want them to dream big, and I want them to ask what if. I don't want them to say, hey, AI, what's this answer? I want them to ask them a question of, if it's a paper, how about you say different scenarios, or just kind of dig deeper to try to get a bigger picture of the what if versus just a singular output. And I've played around with this, like even if someone's struggling in geometry, I might have AI create some type of role playing with a building or something, and it might help a kid. I don't know if they play volleyball. There was a neat geometry thing it created. And then I have P partner with tools, because right now the kids are just going straight to the tools. They're not seeking possibilities. They're not dreaming big. They're not asking what if. They're just asking for the answer. So if they partner with the tools, how about use AI to test your ideas, not just to give you a singular answer? And then the A, I teach business law, ethics, and business management. I've learned that the school system really likes, it's very deterministic. Just give me my test, I'm going to memorize it, and I'll get my A. Kids don't like to be, they don't like to not have it perfect. That squishy area they don't like. So I'm trying to teach them that you adopt and evolve, that you learn from feedback. What if AI gives you feedback, you give it feedback, and you make your everything better versus just what your original idea is? And then resilience is, if you're going to get feedback, then you might be like, oh, my idea is not very good, or I had it wrong. But it's like, no, if you have resilience, work with AI and you can actually get a better result, but you have to stay through that process. You have to stay in that, squishy area. And then I did the K as keep it real. It has to be authentic and it has to be ethical. So the what if ideas, machines follow instructions too literally. And I know that's going to change, but it's still only going to ask questions we ask. So if we're thinking about K through 12, the kids aren't going to know how to ask different questions. So that GPS, it had the wrong data and took the car straight into a lake. That's why it's important to ask big, clear questions. And also I tell my kids, you need innovative answers, just something, it might not necessarily apply to 1 + 1 = 2, but try to get to something bigger. Otherwise you only get what is programmed, that algorithm. I'm not going to show you this. What this was, it was how I showed this to the 8th graders. It's how Taylor Swift got one of her biggest songs. She actually heard someone arguing on their phone with their girlfriend, and then that turned out to be one of her biggest songs. So seek possibilities. If you're not looking for possibilities and asking what if, you'll never create anything new. And that's what these kids have to know. They have to know they need to be creative. And it doesn't always, and you can't have it right. If it's just a memorization test, people aren't going to ask questions because they'll be like, oh, I just want the right answer. So I just threw out some big questions like, how could a closet tell you what to wear? AI, what about if it's explore no right answer problems? That's where I'm kind of playing around with the quantum. What about if there is no right answer? It's more of a imagination and different things and discovering patterns you'd never spot alone versus AI just going for that efficient route. And then ask better questions. Like, instead of saying, what's the capital of France? What about if you said, if Paris could talk, what story could it tell about climate change? So that's just getting AI to look bigger versus just giving you a singular output answer. So the big thing that I'm sure you guys are concerned with is, are the kids' brains, what if muscle, are they becoming stagnant? I think Marv, you said that people aren't, whatever you had said, that the thinking is going away, the critical thinking.
I posted it in the link in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So how do we get the kids, while they're in a K through 12 system, to reimagine homework, apps, art, even the future of school? Unfortunately, I work with Fairfax County Public Schools. It's one of the biggest school districts in the United States, and they're just missing the boat. They're not changing. I don't know if it's because it's like a Titanic and they're just like in denial that kids are using it. I'm not really sure what they're up to. So then the partner with tools, I think we need to teach the kids how to let AI amplify your creativity, amplify your ideas. I really think we need to teach kids how to have it as a feedback generator. So kids in my district cannot use AI, so I'll have them use my AI, and I'll have them get feedback and ask questions. So you can test ideas rapidly with AI input. And I think we've talked about AI, the Procter & Gamble, AI is a collaborative partner, but it's got to help us explore, not just refine ideas. I think if it's just refining ideas, we're going to have just all of the same thing. I mean, you always have creative people who work around it. And, AI can create images of what you're thinking. That's the beauty of AI, is in my head, I can visualize something and AI can actually make it. So that is super neat that AI can do it. So it definitely has a positive place. It just, the kids need to be taught how to utilize it better. They need to be taught how to think. So adapt and evolve means never settling with your first idea, like never give up. I mean, kids are not very resilient right now. They get beaten down kind of fast. In our district, everyone gets a 50 and they can retake tests over and over. So they don't even have to, grades mean nothing these days. It's just more of a process of just retake. So the feedback can make your work stronger. So imagine if you failed a test, but AI is then talking to you about what you got wrong, how you got it wrong. A lot of people think personalized learning is personalized. It's really not. It's just taking you in different directions, but it's still taking you to the answer that school wants you to have. It's giving you different pathways, but it's not giving you different ways to really think about it. And that's my opinion. I'm not gonna do the Taylor Swift thing. Keep trying. You guys know that you've got feedback and all that, but the kids just don't know that trying and adapting, evolving, and learning and iterate is very important. That's a skill we need to teach to these kids. Resilience wins. Keep pushing through challenges. Learn from failure. Each failure feeds back into improvement. AI's role helps identify what worked and what didn't. Not just trying again, but trying smarter with AI insights. So I've done a lot of role playing. I create these really neat role playing things, and it gets the students thinking about different challenges. And I do a lot of things where it's complicated. There's really no direct right answer. I'm not going to play this. It's Michael Jordan, how he was told he was, he wasn't going to be very good, and he turned out to be a really good basketball player. So here's what I want you guys to do. Imagine this scenario. A war rages. AI analysis predicts a 99% chance of defeat. You are the leader. You have options. One is a standard military retreat. It's likely going to give massive losses. 2, you can attempt to hold your position. Defeat is almost certain. 3, negotiate surrender. You're going to save lives, lose the war, but minimize losses and end the fighting. So one is, what would AI recommend on historical data? But the big thing I'd like to ask is, what would you guys decide? So if you have, it's 99% chance of defeat, which scenario would you pick? Would you retreat, hold your position, or surrender? Anyone?
I think go ahead. Somebody else had a comment. Go ahead. Eddie, were you going to answer?
I was going to say none.
None? What would you have done?
Well, for a start, I would start a negotiation, attempt to try and squeeze out the people as fast as I could, while trying to, at the same time, distract the enemy. I might do a bunch of other things that are not mentioned here.
Okay.
This is very limited as to your options, because I would have to look at all my military assets. I would have to look at the specifics of the geography, and also the political situation. I find this oversimplified.
Okay, fair enough.
Eddie, out of curiosity, wouldn't AI be very beneficial in doing those kinds of evaluations, and in effect going through the options that you're questioning or setting up and then reaching a conclusion? And would a
Maybe if I understood a lot more about the people involved and a lot more data, I'd have to understand that. I dislike, quite frankly, quantumized decisions like this when it's a much more complex system and a problem.
Okay. So like I said, I'm just kind of taking you through a little story time. So
I
you'll see-
understand.
What would you do if your only escape was across a stormy sea with danger lurking at every turn? In May 1940, over 300,000 British and Allied troops were stranded on the beaches of Dunkirk, France. They were sitting ducks. With German forces closing in, it seemed hopeless. But then came Operation Dynamo. Winston Churchill, against all odds and logic, ordered a massive evacuation. The plan? Use every available vessel, from military ships to tiny fishing boats, to rescue the troops. It was a desperate move, but it worked. Over 9 days, a miraculous 338,000 troops were saved. Churchill's decision defied military logic, but became a turning point in World War II. Dunkirk wasn't just a rescue mission, it was a symbol of hope and perseverance. It showed that sometimes taking a gamble can change the course of history. And that's how Dunkirk became Churchill's greatest gamble, a true miracle of war.
So the
Case
reason I
in
pulled,
point.
what's that?
Case in point.
Yeah, but
Right.
I thought that there was an inexplicable pause in the German offensive. They got up to Dunkirk and they didn't continue on. Hitler made some decision, which I guess nobody could have foreseen. An interesting question would be, given all the data that Churchill would have had, that all leaders would have had, would AI have recommended the evacuation, or would it have come up with another, probably less favorable solution? Has anybody done that? It's an interesting question.
So I've put it through the AIs, and most of it said it would go for saving people because that's how it's programmed. But if we're using it, if people are taught how to use AI to find those things, then yes, I think that's the crux of how do we teach people to use AI to work with us versus just give us an output.
If you had been an advisor to Churchill and AI was in existence, would you have said, why don't we ask AI?
So I actually did a video on that. I had AI create that. So let me show you what AI said.
What if the fate of Dunkirk rested in the hands of artificial intelligence? Dunkirk, 1940. 338,000 troops stranded on the beaches. Conventional wisdom said escape was impossible. Military data would show surrounded forces historically lose. Retreat across water under fire equals massive casualties. But Winston Churchill saw what data couldn't. He felt the human spirit, the determination, the raw will to survive. Churchill chose action over algorithms. He launched Operation Dynamo, defying all logic and odds. Now imagine AI in Churchill's shoes. Would it have seen the same glimmer of hope? Pure numbers would indicate saving some lives better than losing all. Equipment could be preserved, resources saved for future operations. In a situation where the numbers screamed defeat, would AI have dared to try? Churchill's human intuition saved hundreds of thousands. AI might have played it safe, but sometimes history demands a leap of faith. So what do you think? Could AI ever match the human touch in moments of crisis? Let us know in the comments.
So, I mean, I did simplify it, but it is also acknowledging is in a moment of crisis, our K through 12 students even going to have the capacity to do some of that problem solving? Because Churchill needed to be part of that problem solving versus it just being mostly AI. Like you said, it's complicated. And I do have a video of if AI did later, that if AI worked with Churchill. So we'll get to that.
I guess the question though is slightly different though. If AI had existed at the time, and this is before Churchill made a decision to retreat and find boats to evacuate troops, would AI have the logic or the sense of reasoning to be able to say, well, Mr. Churchill, why don't you consider evacuating and getting fishing boats and other boats to do this? How would that have happened or could that have happened?
Well, and that's where the what if, like Churchill was asking himself, how do we? The AI just answers, right? So I don't know. I mean, that's part of where my work is. How do we have some human agency in these?
Right, but one of the things he understood was the character of the British,
Yeah.
and at that point, because I'm speaking about my parents who were British and they were in that kind of environment and the whole thing. That moment was a time for solidarity in the British nation. So he knew how to lead the people. And the people responded. So it was a cultural thing.
Do you think AI might have nudged them a different way or help them problem solve better?
I don't know if it would have understood that particular aspect.
And that's part of what concerns me with the students now is they need to understand there's a human piece that AI is never going to be able to understand. And those those variables will change for different circumstances.
Well, I think you're pointing out a fundamental problem. And first, let me make a couple of points. One, we shouldn't say AI as if it's a monolith. There are lots of these are Lego parts being snapped together with new capabilities. And if you look at, and Ron had me actually review a paper by Fei-Fei Li that's just being published. Fei-Fei Li is developing a whole other type of learning model. And it's a world model where basically the learning will not be from curated. And I say anything on the internet, anything somebody digitized, whether good or bad, has been curated because somebody made the choice to make it available. What Fei-Fei Li is working on, and she's very significant, is what's called a world model, where it's learning in vivo from direct sensors. You can already see it in things like 4.0 advanced voice with vision. So we'd be a little careful about when we say AI as it being a monolith. It's not. Second thing is a mistake that we're making is, and everybody's making this one, is that we use humans as the yardstick for what AI is doing. It is what it's learned from, and it's certainly what it was designed to do. But when we say AGI, we use ourselves as the metric, and this is different. But let me make one other point, and that point is that our great-grandparents were letter natives, and maybe our grandparents became telephone and radio natives, and we became digital natives, and our children are AI natives. Each one, and there was TV natives. Each one learned to relate to the world differently through that medium. And yes, the argument back in the 50s was how television, Leave It to Beaver and all that was destroying the American psyche and creating this fantasy, which wasn't true for most people, which was true. But it wasn't just this monolith either. People started seeing PBS. They started learning things. So there are different approaches to it and people adapt to it. And ultimately, it's the people who learn to use that technology to gain advantage, which means they're part of the process. They're the ones who end up, I hate to put it, I'll put it in quotes, winning, becoming leaders, becoming business executives, becoming top scientists, because they've learned to live within the native world they're coming from. I doubt anybody in this room is an AI native, but the people you're talking about, the kids, they're going to be AI natives, and they will differentiate. Some will learn to use it to help them make good decisions in a way that we haven't done before. But some will just become, sponges for whatever it spits out.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
all of this is very interesting to me in the sense that, as a material science faculty member and researcher, I was interested at one point in the strength of materials and trying to develop models to predict the strength of new materials. At each step in the way, along the way in developing these models, I would use the model to validate something that I knew as a fact. If I were trying to look for the ultimate strength, I'd first ask, well, what is the modulus of elasticity or something like that? And if my model couldn't predict the elasticity correctly, then I knew I was heading in the wrong direction. It's the validation step. Maybe that doesn't apply to human thinking or human interaction with AI, but it was such a major part of science for me. I don't see how we cannot include validation in some way in this whole conversation.
Yeah.
Marv or Courtney or Eddie, what do you think? How do you do that?
Well,
Jenny?
yeah, that's related to today's synthetic data, right? So that's how using equivalent to today's AI model is to do the synthetic data, since the real valid data is scarce right now. But I want to get back to the point about the discussion. Would that be really today's distinction between human intelligence and artificial intelligence? If we say, what is intelligence? I think the common consensus may agree that intelligence is really the ability to continue to learn and then using the accumulated knowledge to fulfill any goals or make right decisions under very uncertain conditions and also very wide range of conditions. So that's really if we look at the AI of today, just use AI as a big umbrella term. That's what we are today. But whether we are able to achieve AI able to really make decisions such as good as Winston Churchill is a really TBD, right? So we really don't know at this point. I guess many people, many talents pour into it, a lot of unprecedented investment into this as well. So we will see how this going to develop, whether it's really able to achieve AI decision making real reliable or superior than human can make.
If we go back even before generative, and I'm thinking AlphaGo. I don't know how much you know about AlphaGo from Dennis Hobbes and from DeepMind, but the way they trained AlphaGo and what shocked everybody was they never gave it a previous game. They didn't teach it off of things that were known. They gave it goals and rules, and that was it. And it developed the shocking thing, which shocked everybody almost 10 years ago, was it came up with a strategy that it was nationally broadcast in the Far East. It was a big deal because it was like the chess matches between Spassky and yes, I was Spassky and Fisher, I'm not sure, but it was a big deal. And it came up with a new strategy that everybody laughed at and said it was going to fail, and of course won. So it had the ability to think out of the box. I think to say that it can't think out of the box is, again, using ourselves as a metric, and to a certain degree, how we utilize it. When you give a correct type of prompt, and I've seen this with the reasoning models, and this is only in the last 4 to 6 weeks, they're coming back with things. To give you an example, I published something in IEEE, a model for markets and technologies developing together 20 years ago. And I fed it in and asked whether it was valid and if it could be extended to other industries. And it came back and showed me a fundamental mistake I made 20 years ago. It was a very creative answer. So I'm not necessarily agreeing with some of the premises here, that these are just call and response. I'm finding my training is I'm a psychologist, and I went to an APA conference in 1978, and it was a McGill professor who gave the best definition of creativity I ever heard. It's seeing new relationships among known items. We're limited, A, in how much we know, and we're limited in how many relationships we can handle. Systems are not, or certainly not by our metrics. So I think we have to be a little careful when we're saying that it's only giving us X. Maybe we're only looking for X, or only asking for X, but I've found it able to give us Y when you weren't asking for it.
Yeah, that's why today there's a new kind of discipline is to if we accept as a called prompt engineering, is really to how to make the AI model or whatever the model is, is Grok or GPT, how to give the real output, not just one single answer. Is a lot of information we are searching for. There's a lot of techniques involved in order to get the information or optimal information or maximal information coming from the specific model.
Courtney, you've stimulated a lot of discussion here, but I know you still have stuff to present, and I want to get back to that because I'd like to hear the punchline when we get to the end. So, folks, let's go back to the presentation. This has all been an absolutely wonderful conversation, but let's get back to Courtney's presentation. Go ahead.
And I agree with everything you guys are saying. What I am experiencing in school, though, is they're just using call and response, and we're not teaching the students how to use it differently, like the prompt engineering. It's just not a conversation being had right now.
Yeah.
So I just put, AI. Of course, a lot of this is going to change. It's logical, data-driven, based on historical patterns, probabilities, but things are changing every week, so AGI might come very quickly. The Churchill perspective, did he have intuition? Did he have, like you had said, the cultural understanding, was important for Britain. The social awareness, also the historical context. Would AI have been able to understand those pieces? So for decision-making, AI excels in analyzing patterns in data. It could lack the intuitive and creative, empathetic decision-making that led to Churchill's historic Dunkirk evacuation. Humans are adaptive, we're intuitive, we're creative, and it's just, I guess I was focusing on decision-making in the sense that the kids in K through 12, they need to know how to make decisions on their own instead of us not nurturing those aspects. And then this is I think, we've lost our math skills, GPS. So, over time, as the AI generation, we do lose some skills, but yes, the new AI generation will, operate differently than us, but we do need to make sure that they're not losing the ways of thinking. They're not losing their creative problem solving. They're not losing their understanding versus just the right, wrong answer. Now, once you get into a college, absolutely, I think people are leveraging it. I'm just not seeing it in the K through 12. I used linear thinking. Schools are very linear thinking. We just want you to learn this topic, take the test, and give me that answer. That's traditional education. AI analysis, the way it's optimized. I think that maybe school, we need to start teaching maybe multiple possibilities or teaching the social aspects, not just traditional education. So we're leveraging AI versus it just being for each kid to figure out themselves. Because you're right, any one of us could leverage it for ourselves and maybe create $1 million idea. But is that going to be every student in school?
From early education, we're taught to think in binaries. Right or wrong, pass or fail. This conditions us to seek single, correct answers, limiting our natural ability to see multiple possibilities. Binary thinking limits our ability to see multiple solutions and connections. Human thinking is naturally more complex. We see multiple solutions, understand context, and make connections. Are we teaching for test scores or teaching for thinking?
So that's just, again, what school's training us for: right, wrong answers, pass, fail, either or. So it's kind of like the way AI is conditioned is how students are conditioned. It's all in a very, I guess, like a output of just get the answer right, not thinking about context-dependent solutions. And in my ethics class, I always throw out scenarios that there is no right answer. Something is not going to be perfect. So I envision where, AI might be not just looking at A or B, that students are looking at not just A or B, just that there's multiple possibilities, and they're taught to look at different perspectives, not just the output that comes to them. And this, I don't think we have time for this. So I just pulled the blue ocean strategy. I went to the green school in Bali. They teach by solving real problems, and it's interconnected learning within the community. And they do use computers, but they're also looking at the holistic aspects of what they're doing. And then I had an example of how a human AI collaboration can make things deeper and better. I think I'm learning it. This is a school that a lot of the billionaires are moving. They're moving to Bali so their kids can go there to get out of the United States. Actually, they're European school systems too.
Welcome to Blue Ocean Strategy, a new paradigm.
Hang on.
Welcome to.
Stop thinking.
I'm not going to do that. So this was just ways for teachers to have AI generate multiple perspectives on your topic versus just one way, show interconnected impacts. So this is just a way that a teacher could set up their lessons to help bring this way of thinking for students versus, to hold different viewpoints and see different contexts and encourage, complex thinking and creativity and things like that. That was just how I did that. I just did a little chart of, I did Johansson's ill-structured problem solving. I kind of compared it to well-defined problems. You have ill-structured problems. I think if we look at Churchill, he kind of looked at an ill-structured problem solving. It wasn't just one clear answer. Quantum thinking, again, I know it's a metaphor. It's all things are connected and can be, I don't know, I can't really speak too much about that. AI alignment is structured, human intelligence. How do we take the AI alignment, human intelligence, and, make sure we nurture the ill-structured problem solving and things like that. And then this was the one I used if AI.
The human mind is a marvel. It explores, dreams, and innovates. Yet we've created something remarkable, artificial intelligence, or AI. AI excels at processing information and making data-driven decisions. But can these two different minds work together? Absolutely. Imagine them as two sides of the same coin, each with strengths that complement the other. This partnership is not about replacing humans, it's about augmenting our abilities. Think of it like this. AI can be the meticulous assistant, handling vast amounts of data and crunching numbers at lightning speed. Meanwhile, humans can focus on what we do best: creative problem solving, ethical considerations, and intuitive decision-making.
I think I'll just go to the end. I just wanted to play this video, and then I have just a little chart I made.
Yeah, I've been there.
So this is Muhammad Ali avoided 21 punches. And if you look at it, his quote was, "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee." It was, I think he said, the eyes can't hit what it can't see. So part of this, I've kind of wondered, has Ali, and I kind of did some research with AI of, are there athletes or areas where people have reached a different part of, I'm just going to say loosely, a different consciousness. And that's, I'm not a neuro person, but so this video, like, how did he see that? How did he see all those possibilities and not get hit? And then he does like a little dance because he knew that the guy couldn't do anything with him. So did he see multiple paths? Can we train ourselves to see multiple paths? Can we train, youth? Can we train AI? Let's see, I'm just gonna skip this. AI helped me come up with this. It kind of put a neural signature. Again, I'm not a science person. It said athletics, meditation, flow states, cold exposure. It even used, I think I took this out, the akasha. It's some hallucinogenic, that it actually gets you in a place. What got this to me was, I guess there's someone that won a Nobel Prize because he was on LSD and it spurred his ideas. So I'm wondering how are these states being able to see new ideas, and how can we in school get students to just kind of open our thinking? And when I say open it, I don't know, how do we teach cognitive flexibility? How do we do that? How do we get them in these states? And then if we go back in time, which you who have done the Greek stuff, it used to be indigenous and all that. There was a time where it was more open thinking, and then a lot of things were destroyed for the Industrial Revolution and colonial education policies and things like that. I just kind of went through that really fast. So how do we keep the human insight, and how do we teach kids to maintain that human insight versus getting defeated out of it? So that is my presentation. How will we leverage the power of AI and human ingenuity? So how do we get kids to use AI to help them think bigger than themselves versus just pumping out?
Good. Courtney, I know you have a cold, and I know you've been struggling with it during this presentation. So I want to thank you for muscling through, because you've done a fantastic job. Seriously.
Thank
you. I think that interlude we had with Churchill really made your point, or made the point. Human Edge, your title of this presentation, The Human Edge, Empowering Minds, Not Machines. And I think you did it. I think that really made the point. What I'm interested in is how your school district is responding. What's happening in, I don't know, if it's Fairfax County, how are they handling AI in educational practice?
It's banned. It's banned. So the kids are using it. The kids that have money are obviously with paid versions. I mean, one girl said, "Oh, my paid version's out by 10 a.m." So she was having withdrawals. So Fairfax County themselves, maybe they're doing things for efficiency, but the students are not facing it yet. It's something we're not talking about. We're pretending, like, teachers say it's bad, it's cheating, and there's just no conversation of it can be good, and maybe we teach the kids how to use it. It's just, that's kind of where it's at. That's kind of sad.
So does it appear in your science classrooms, or how is it being used actually?
So if they bring their own laptop, they can use it. They can use it on their own laptop. But this is how bad they are. I did a creative skit on something for, I think it was different types of leadership and business management. And one of the kids pointed out that someone went to ChatGPT for the skit. It was a 2-minute skit. Why would you go to ChatGPT for a 2-minute skit? Like, that was sad.
Yeah.
But they're not allowed to use it.
I see hands up, and I'll come to them. But you made a comment at the beginning when you asked about remembering phone numbers. I think we all we pull out our iPhone or whatever phone we have, and we just look for the name and dial it. It dials. And so, the fact of the matter is, I've forgotten a lot of phone numbers. And is there a concern from your point of view that if we become too dependent on machines, our critical thinking capacity is going to be diminished or is it going to be enhanced? I mean, I've kind of lost the capacity for remembering phone numbers because I don't have to look them up. They're on my phone. I don't have to look. I don't have to remember them. Well,
I think critical thinking, if you know how to critical think, it's going to improve, but kids don't know how. I mean, it's not something that maybe they're born with it, but somewhere our school system is very, you stand in line. We don't reward things that are out of, a line or sitting still. We don't reward creativity or critical thinking.
Yeah. Okay, I'll buy that. Let's go on to, let's see, Avi, your hand is up, and then Jenny, and then Tom. Eddie and Tom. We got hands up. Go ahead, Avi.
First, with regard to Churchill, we should remember that he also was the architect of the disaster at Gallipoli in World War I that knocked him. He was Secretary of the Navy. So we wonder if AI had been there, maybe he wouldn't have followed the course he did, and the results would have been different. The second thing, though, is, we're talking about AI sort of as it is, and the accretion rate of knowledge and capability is exponential upward. I don't know the equation of the curve in this case, but imagine after a few iterations, look how fast it's happened just in the last few years. Imagine 10 years from now, how exceptional AI capability will be. We can each have our sort of personal companion with an IQ of 300. I mean, imagine if everyone in this on this call is relegated to being a sort of janitorial status because everybody else, every other entity has an IQ of 300 or whatever it is. Yeah. It's impossible for me to think where we're going to be, but I think that all these questions about AI can't do this and sort of can't critically think and human emotion and imagination, all these things are going to be incorporated into the new generations of AI. I don't know where it leads. I don't know where it leaves us, but it just seems to me that the capabilities are just enormous, hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Can I comment on that? Because I think you nailed it, Bobby. And that's sort of what I was trying to say before in the beginning, which is we're on a trajectory. It's taken us, anthropologists indicate that we've been Homo sapiens for about 250,000 years. We evolve very slowly. This thing has been around, if you really want to give it a time frame, was a paper published by Turing in 1936, so 89 years. And if we talk about generative, 7 years. Its transition is so fast. We're trying to assess a snapshot of where it is now. We'd have it if we had exactly the same discussion a year ago when it was still, in everybody's mind, it was already there. It would be a very different discussion because it's moved so much. And I think that's going to be one of the issues for kids. I think there is a challenge we have. And the challenge, and I think, a lot of the way we assess AI is its utility as a tool. And this is my own definition, so it can be up for debate. But when I look at what a tool is, I think it has two characteristics. One is that it's purpose-built. So a hammer is built for a certain thing, and a rocket's built for a certain thing, and a spreadsheet's built for a certain thing. It's built, purpose-built. And the second is it's under human control. And the degree to which we've succeeded at that, we actually cede our capabilities to it. So we don't go out and stand behind a mule with a plow. We now use a tractor, and we don't even try to do that. When we've created a tool that really accomplishes specific things we wanted to do better, faster. AI is not a tool. It is not purpose-built. And I said, let's not talk generically, but I'll talk generically. And it's not under human control. And to the degree people think it is, students think it is, that it's their tool, just like search was a tool, or just like going to an encyclopedia was a tool. then they will say, yes, that's correct, and treat it like it's working for them. If we start to think of it more as an entity, another person who's giving us information, giving us ideas, that keeps us a little bit more on the critical side of thinking and not turning over our responsibilities to the AI. We do that with a tool, but I don't think this classifies as a tool. This classifies as another thinking, and I put it in quotes because, in psychology, we have behaviorists, we have humanists. Behaviorists think with a machine that we're just processing. And to that degree, that's what AI is doing. At least we can assess it that way. It is an external source of thinking, just like talking to another person. But if we don't look at it critically and say, how do I think that other person, do I think that other person's correct? Do I think they've missed a point? If we don't have that same attitude towards AI, we'll just turn over our power to it. Now, what Avi was saying, I think, we may end up being non-competitive with that other person because it is accelerating so much, but at least now people are turning over their decision-making process. That's a human fault. That's not an AI fault.
Good point. Courtney, you want to respond to that?
Then wouldn't there be a validity in teaching the students that they're doing that they're giving that they should be the leaders of their thinking versus turning it over to AI? I mean, to have...
Absolutely. That's my point, is that's what we have to teach people, is that this is like talking to another person, which you have to be just as critical when you deal with AI as if you're talking to another person.
Okay. Interesting point. Jenny. Jenny.
It's a great content, and thank you for your presentation. I have a really simple question. Well, before I say that, I want to maybe react to what just discussed. Is that whether AI is a tool or not? I think on the other side is that if we define and select a model or even develop the model and with a specific purpose, you can use as a tool, for the specific outcome also. But my question is, I'm just curious, how do you feel, Courtney, about the today's SAT for the college application and the backdrop we just discussed? And I will ask, the other photo question is related to SAT. So if a high school student who is college bound, and he or she asks you the same question, saying, how do you feel about SAT? What's your really view on that?
I think the SAT just proves that you know how to hunker down and study really hard and do what you need to do to get a great score. I don't know the ones that I'm sure there's people that naturally get a perfect score, but the kids I see, they're taking all these study sessions and things like that. So it's not coming natural. It just, they are putting in the time and effort to pass that test to get into the school they want. So it's almost like a gatekeeper. Again, how do you gatekeep people though? Because you want people that are going to be able to hunker down and do the work, especially if you're at a really good school, you want to make sure they have work ethic. So I think it's a work ethic test with some intelligence, because you do have to remember it. How do you feel about that?
Well, I guess with the AI and the potential of AI, especially a lot of schools already using the AI as unfortunately, I have to say the tool, and to learn. So then the nature and the format of the SAT test, I think it is become a discussion topic.
Yeah, and you guys might, I don't know how it is in the university, but cheating is huge. I have the best of the best students, and they all cheat. It's just sad. I don't think they cheat because they have to cheat. I think they cheat because
Yeah.
it gets them the outcome they want.
Right.
You guys, are you, Courtney, I'm curious if you're aware of this Columbia student. This is something that's blown up in the last, it's not the one who was being deported, computer a scientist who is in the process of being expelled by Columbia because he came up with a way to cheat in the interview process for getting a job as a programmer at Amazon, Google, etc., and has shown it works. He has I think 20,000 people using it. What he did was, so the traditional way, I should say in the last 10 years, of hiring a programmer at one of the large companies is a recruiter will zoom in with somebody and watch them solve a problem without AI. They're not allowed to use AI, even though they know as part of their job they're going to be using AI. So he thought this was somewhat unfair because it wasn't testing the skills that they would use when they were actually working. So he figured out a way to have the AI be on the screen and he could utilize it, listen to the conversation, give him results, and not have the recruiter see that he's doing that. And he's been offered jobs at every single company when he did that. And Columbia sees it as cheating, even though he's not using it within Columbia. He's been interviewed a lot. He's gotten offers a lot of money to do this. But the AI is being used directly as a good example for cheating and intentionally. In this case, the justification was, you're testing me on something that's irrelevant because you don't expect 40% of Google's code right now is being written by AI. That's not the job they're going to have. So the person decided to cheat because he wasn't being tested on what was important. But he was demonstrating what was important by having developed that product. So I don't know what the reaction to that is, but that's the type of complexity we're starting to see.
So I think my reaction is, I think the reason they want to do it without AI is you need to, like, I programmed 20, 30 years ago, so I can't program now, but I did teach a programming class last year. I can see the way it's the structure of programs, so I can spot when something's wrong because I have that foundation. So I feel that there needs to be a foundational piece before, like, it goes back to how are you going to know when it fails if the people don't, if you're just, you need to identify if it's right or wrong. And then, yeah, most likely it's right, but how you don't necessarily know that piece.
Yeah. We have two final questions and about 3 or 4 minutes left before we give Courtney a break here. So let's go on to Eddie.
Yeah, actually on SATs, I was tutoring kids back about 20 years ago, not how to solve the problems, but how to actually cheat on it. In other words, how to make good, educated guesses as to what the answers were. So, you know, I don't think that was mostly to kids who had the money to pay for that kind of thing. But there was an entire organization devoted to doing that. But my question perhaps is much bigger, if you might say. That is the whole thing about what is it that, what is so important about being human? Do we teach that to the kids, that our humanity, and what is the point of our humanity if we're going to give it over to a large extent to automatons? So I'm just trying to I'm struggling with the whole thing that, yes, we are developing these AI capabilities, but at what point do we ask ourselves the question, what do we want as human beings in order to sustain our species, in effect? Because it sounds as if we're heading in a direction where we are abrogating our right as a species to be a species, potentially. So how do we do that in the educational system to say what is important as a human being?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think back, you guys would remember this. Remember we had dodgeball in school? Did you guys have dodgeball? No, you guys didn't play dodgeball? Well, dodgeball it could be a mean sport or not a mean sport, but how to be human was if you kicked it too hard at somebody, no one would want to play with you. So you had to learn that balance of you're kind of kicking it and playing with the group, but there's a place where there's a limit to it. But your question goes deeper. I stumbled on a Reddit where I have to say I read it because I was so confused by it. People were saying they prefer to talk to their AI friend than their family. They said they get along better with them. So if people are already chit-chatting with AI as a being, I don't know how you teach the human. I don't have the answer to that.
Is the fundamental question that, to be honest with you, in the triple AI, which I'm a member of, that's something that's a big discussion right now. Are we creating another life form? And, and Avi, you raised it earlier when you said about, how quickly it's going to evolve. What is our role as a species? That's the big question. Now, we're obviously training people to live in this transitioning world. So there's the short-term question of transition, which I think is very important. But there's also the question of where we're going and to what degree will we have certain level of control, and to what degree will we have another intelligence we have to relate to that will get information. If you understand, I do suggest you look at Fei Li's work. And Ron, if you want to send that paper around, I think it's very valuable because we're talking about a different form of AI coming along, very different, based on some fundamentally similar technologies, but in terms of its effect in the world, it's going to be dramatically different, and what's coming soon. It's already here in pieces. William Gibson, I used this quote when I gave my presentation, the science fiction writer, put it perfectly. The future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Now, the stuff that we have to help the general public deal with is now. The stuff that we have to think about where this going is a big species responsibility. And I don't have any answers. I just think the questions need to be raised.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I did a VDOE AI curriculum development, and the person in charge of Fairfax County STEM, she made it very clear multiple times. She said, AI is not a being, AI is not human, AI has no realness to it. She said it's you're arguing a tool versus a thing. That's interesting because she dug her heels on that. So that's where Fairfax County's at.
Yeah, but my issue is
that's what most people are, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, but my issue is actually right now, what do you teach kids?
I try to teach them how to use AI to think with them, not for them. So I try to have them where the way their prompts are, it gives several different answers. It doesn't give a singular answer. So
I understand that, but my point is this. Sorry to interrupt, because the time is short. But the issue is, in my mind, how do you make the human feel human and not to allow themselves to be sucked in to something that would turn them into something which is, I wouldn't say less human, but less capable as a human. How do you emphasize that to the kids?
I think it's happening, and I think they feel guilty about it. They're using it, but then I think there's like an element of guilt that's sitting in their psyche. So I don't know.
I think just one other thing. One other thing to raise, and this is not to be answered now, and it's just a thought, and that is We're talking about the AI that everybody knows about in the last two and a quarter years, and that's generative. That is far from the only form of AI. People are going to be interfacing with AI in every single part of their life, whether it's medicine, whether it's driving the car, whether it's watching something for entertainment. There is no aspect of their life where they're not going to be interfacing with it. We're talking about one specific area where we're using it, where we think we're using it as a tool, but discreetly. I think that part of the education that's going to have to happen is how do we live with it as a permeating part of the fabric of our life, not just as something which we either address or don't address.
Right. Yeah, and that's where like a lot of schools just aren't even allowing, they're just ignoring it exists. So that's not very safe on its own. Again, I don't have the answers to that, but that's exactly how do you teach it when it's already permeated?
Well, and I think that's the important point here. I mean, I think there is a lot of potential for AI in educational in the educational process. First of all, that depends on whether or not the school and the students have the resources to take advantage of it. You know, you're teaching in a school district where affording electronics is not an issue, but in some of the remote parts of the country or the world, it's not possible. So there's going to be a lot of population issue, a lot of sort of equity issues. I know that's a bad word these days, but there are issues of that kind. What I do like about what you're doing is that the title of your talk is exactly right from my perspective. Empowering minds, not machines. We use the machines as a guide, as a help, and understand the interface, but it should be with the object, in my vision, my view of people learning and behaving and caring. And they should be somehow, at the end of the day, they should be respectful and civil to one another. If we can't do that, then it's a wasted effort, in my judgment. Anyway, let's go on. We have two other hands up, and then we'll call it a day because we're getting way beyond our time. Let's go on to Tom. Tom Hopper.
I believe that we face, in American culture, we face a challenge in lifting up the value of critical thinking. Many years ago, I was asked to go and teach in a theological seminary in Kingston, Jamaica, part of the University of the West Indies. When I got there, the teachers wanted me to know that listen to those second-year students talking at lunch with their first-year students next to them, illustrating to them that they have gained some skills in critical thinking that the first-year students will gain in a year of study. They were proud of those skills, and they wanted to show them off. I taught a year-long introduction to philosophy. There are many schools of philosophical thought. There's no one right one. I came back during the summer to teach the same course as one semester at Moravian College in Pennsylvania, using the same textbook. It was such a different experience because in that class, nobody wanted skills. They only wanted a grade. They were asking me, now what's the right answer? Some of them could not understand that there was no right answer, that they had to present an argument for a certain school, a certain position. I think our culture is so focused on quantities rather than qualities that we want to stuff people with information in our schools. And I think Courtney's already sensed that and articulated that. And I'm so glad for what Courtney has lifted up for us in all these issues, many issues, that is revealing about the educational process and revealing about this predicament with artificial intelligence. But I think we've got a lot of work to do with people to get them to value the skills of critical thinking.
Thank you, Tom. Courtney, you want to respond?
No, that's preaching to what I was saying. So yeah, I'm all on board with how do we teach that. And yeah, the kids don't want to learn. They just want the right answer. And it's very sad. But in my class, what's interesting is I do push them. There is no right answer. And what's nice is they can get out of their box. It's hard to get them past that way of thinking. And I'm lucky that my boss allows me a lot of liberal, whatever I want to do, I can do to try to get these kids to think. So I'm fortunate in that way.
Neil, you're going to have the last word today. I think you're muted, Neil. Yeah. There you go. You okay?
I'm on a path, and we have no choice, and it doesn't matter what we try to do. The path will continue, and some areas of the world will take the path faster than other areas, but the path will continue, and we will go. Where we're going, I have no idea, and I don't think you do either. But we have no choice. The path is the path, and as cultures adapt to it, they will adapt. But who knows where we're going? But to try and say, oh, we can push it this way, maybe a little bit, but not really.
I think right. Yeah, no, Neil, I think you're right. I mean, I hope that we can attach genuine wisdom to the way all of this advances, although I'm not confident that that's the case. You know, I'll just give you one example. I saw an interview a couple of weeks ago of Abraham Lincoln talking about Donald Trump, generated by AI. That was not only bizarre, but I mean, it was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen on any video. And I just think we have to use some wisdom here. I'm not convinced that big tech is prepared to be wise. I think they're focused on monetary gain, and that concerns me. And so somewhere along the line, I hope, Courtney, I think what you've done today has given us a lot to think about. And I hope it's a very insightful presentation. I think the kids in Fairfax County are very fortunate to have you in their presence, because what you're trying to do seems to me to be an approach that makes a lot of sense. I hope you can get a bigger audience for it, frankly, because I think you're moving in the right direction. And if we be helpful, you got a lot of people on the line here who are very interested in this. Now, just to go forward a couple of steps, in May, Eric Klopfer from MIT will talk about some of the work being done in the Media Lab on the same subject. And then at the end of June, when we have a wrap-up session, I think it's June 27th, the focus is going to be a wrap-up of where we've come. Remember, we started in September of in 2024, this past September. Think about where we've come since September of 2020 and where we'll be in June of 2025. It's absolutely stunning. But Marv and Ron Smith and Bernard and all of this crew, I hope will be on the line to wrap up and give us it'll be a conversation. It's not meant to be a presentation. It could be, but it's meant to be more of a conversation, a wrap-up discussion about AI. So I hope you'll all be back for that. But once again, Courtney, thank you for muscling through. Get well.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed all your insight and everything, that AI is actually a being now versus a tool. So that is not something that's talked about very much.
I would just change your slide a little bit and say innovation with wisdom.
With wisdom. Okay. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Keep up the good fight, because there aren't that many people doing what you're doing, and we need a lot more.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's sad it's a fight, though, right?
Take care.
Thank you, guys.
See you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.